Welcome to week 6 of the Summer Confidence Challenge. So today we're going to finish talking very specifically about going back to school, because this is often a time when anxiety can start to creep back in, both for our children and for us parents. And you might find yourself thinking, what if they find it difficult? What if they don't like their new teacher? What if they struggle to get into school? And this can be particularly true if you had some challenges last year with getting into school and your child was anxious going into school. And those thoughts and feelings that you might be having now and your child might be having now absolutely make sense. But what we want to be very careful of, and this will run through all the things I'm talking about in this video, we want to be very careful not to assume or show our assumption to them that they're going to be anxious. And this can be really hard to do because anxious children in particular are very, very attuned to the things that we're subtly saying and subtly showing in our non-verbal communication and language. They check with us subconsciously how we think and feel about things. So in this session, what we're going to think really carefully about is the difference between preparing and predicting. We want to help our children be practically and emotionally prepared for school without predicting accidentally to them that they are going to find it difficult. So first of all, we'll start with practical preparation. Now, there are lots of things that need practical preparation, and for your own sanity as well, it's great not to leave these to the last minute. So on a practical level, all those things that need preparing, it's really helpful to do them. I would recommend spreading them out and just doing little and often. So what we just want to do is casually be saying, okay, today let's get your stationery ready, and we're done, and so on. Now, emotionally, one things that can be really helpful to prepare emotionally is to start clawing back their bedtimes and start getting bedtimes back at a good time so that they are well rested when they are going back to school. Now, with anxious children, one of the things that can be really helpful is helping them a little bit know what to expect. And last week we talked about this tolerating uncertainty and helping remove some uncertainty without removing all uncertainty. And this applies here as well. So if you think your child might be anxious, and absolutely if they are telling you they're anxious, one of the things that can be really helpful is to add in some of the things that they do know, some of the things that might be staying the same, and removing uncertainty about some of the things that they don't know. So for example, if they're going to a new school, you might get up the floor plan or the map, or you might look at photos of the school. You might ask your child, whatever age and whether it's a new school or not, to describe what they remember about their new class or their new school or their new teacher, just casually. So we're not doing it in a way that's saying, oh, you're probably nervous about going back to school, so let's do some exercises to help take away the uncertainty. Just keep it really casual and give them opportunities to picture or see things about that new place. So you might say, oh, I can't remember what your new teacher looks like. Do you remember what colour hair she's got? And then you might say, oh, I really like to see her face again. Let's go and find it on the website and present it like that. So you're adding in some certainty for them and adding in their ability to picture where they're going without talking about it as an anti-anxiety device. So next I want to talk about talking about school. And especially if our child has been anxious about going to school, we often want to check in with them and ask them how they're feeling. And I'm going to say, be careful about leading questions, a bit like being in court, right? So we want to absolutely give them the opportunity to share how they're thinking and feeling about going back to school, but keep those questions open without giving an accidental assumption. So you might say, how are you feeling about going back to school? We don't want to say, are you nervous about going back to school? Because what we're accidentally telling them is, I'm assuming that you are. And one of the things I really like to do when I'm talking about going back to school is talk about how more than one feeling is possible. So you might actually say, what different feelings, how many different feelings are you having about going back to school, because yes, they might be nervous, but they might also be excited at the same time. They might also be looking forward to this thing while not looking forward to that thing. And we want them to learn that more than one feeling is possible at the same time, because that's what we want them to learn long term about anxiety is you can be feeling anxious and also excited, or you can be missing me but also enjoy going. You can learn that I can feel anxious and also manage to do. So you might want to ask them casually how they're feeling about going back to school, or you might just want to drop in a few statements about going back to school. Oh, it's a week and a half now until you go back to school, and give them space there to talk. You know your child, and you know if they need that invitation to talk about their feelings or not. So follow what you know about your child there. And then when you are talking about school, if your child is communicating some reticence, some reluctance, some anxieties about going back to school, this comes back to all the things we've talked about as well, about how to answer those worries. So you might just reflect back the feeling and empathize. Oh yeah. Or you're a little bit worried. Yeah, I get that. It's been quite a big break, hasn't it? And we're not going to jump in with, don't worry, you'll be fine, you can do this, this and this, and try to fix the problem. So we're going to allow them to feel a bit uncomfortable and be comfortable with that discomfort ourselves. And they might say, well, I wonder what it's like. I wonder if I'm going to know my way around. And we can just say, oh yeah, I wonder what's going to happen. Yeah, I wonder what that will be like. Now, when you're talking about going back to school, some children might ask a lot of questions, like what if questions, or make anxiety related statements. So they might say, well, what if I don't know my way around? What if I need to go to the toilet in the middle of a lesson and I don't know how to do that? What if my teacher's really strict and I don't like them? And we often get stuck in a trap of over reassurance. And what that looks like is saying things like, don't worry, if you get lost, you can just do this. No, don't worry, you just need to put up your hand and your teacher will definitely listen to you, for example. So I want you to be really careful about reassurance and how we answer it, because what we're saying, if we say to a child, don't worry, you definitely won't get lost. You will, I know you'll be fine. You'll be able to find your way around. And if you can't, just ask someone. What we're doing there is a few things. And what we're saying is, first of all, if you get lost, that will absolutely be a problem. Don't worry, you won't get lost. Don't worry, you will make friends. And the truth is, we can't promise that. But also what we're saying in those statements is, yeah, that would be a problem. So I'm going to tell you, don't worry, that definitely won't happen. And instead, we want to keep it open with, you know what? If those things happen, I know we'll be able to work our way through it. I know you're going to be able to cope. Or what are your thoughts about what you might do if that does happen? The next thing to think about when we're talking about school is to normalize it and not be afraid of it. We don't want school to be the elephant in the room that nobody is mentioning, because actually that's probably going to make any anxiety worse. Don't be scared to talk about it, but just keep it casual. Mention it casually. Don't make all the conversations about it. Don't need to keep analyzing and checking in and scrutinizing how they're thinking and feeling. And most of all, if they seem to be a little bit nervous, don't panic. It makes sense they feel a bit nervous. They have had a big break. And that's probably the best thing to say, is to just say, oh, you're a bit nervous. Yeah, I get that. And then you don't need to fix how they're feeling. Allow them to feel nervous without that making you feel anxious about them feeling anxious. Now, at the beginning of this video, I was talking about how you might be having these what if worries. What if they're worried? What if they're anxious? And what if they struggle to go back? And ultimately, what I'm encouraging you to do is absolutely the same as what I'm asking you to get your child to do, which is sit with the uncertainty without trying to find the answers, and just trust that if those things do happen, that you're going to be able to sit with your child and find the solution. As you prepare for the return to school, if you notice yourself thinking, I don't know how they're going to manage, try turning that into, I don't know yet exactly how that's going to go, but I'm going to give them the opportunity to find out. And then whatever happens, we're going to be okay. Or if you're thinking they're really going to struggle with going back to school, maybe turn it into, I wonder how they're going to cope with going back to school. And flipping those things for yourselves and repeating those messages to yourself can absolutely change how we are presenting going back to school to our children as well. And this can reduce the possibility that we are inadvertently projecting that there is something to feel anxious about. And thinking back to all the things that we've covered over this challenge, ultimately, even if going to school is a little bit uncomfortable or difficult, what we're giving them the opportunity to learn is that they can do difficult things, they can cope with difficult feelings, they can make decisions for themselves, they can solve their own problems, they can cope when they're nervous. They've got you to support them and empathize with them without needing to fix all their problems for them. And so hopefully what you can see through the challenge is how those other themes have led into this one. I hope the return to school goes really smoothly. Keep calm, just empathize with your child and project the confidence in their ability to handle anything that comes their way. And then if things do come their way, help them through those difficult feelings and help them to solve those problems. Thanks for joining me on the summer challenge, and I'll see you soon.